Calls for $1 million per person, Aboriginal reparations. Let's have a look. Happy Australia Day, everyone. And I thought we'd have a look at this article from news.com.au because some activists are calling for reparations for Aboriginal Australians up to the tune of $1 million each. If anything, it just shows a lack of understanding of money and inflation, which, well, frankly, I don't think any of us can be quite surprised with, but I still thought it would be worth having a look at this article. So, Australia Day, police vow crackdown on Invasion Day protests across the country. Now, there are all these activists protesting against Australia Day, calling it Invasion Day. Now, you have to realise Australia was in a, well, Stone Age state before European powers arrived here and decided to settle. It was the Stone Age, everyone. And in some regards, it is quite remarkable, and we need to have a lot of respect for the fact that Aborigines managed to survive on this desert of a continent, that they had the capacity to eke out an existence and live a life on this country the way they did. That should be respected and celebrated on this day. But the danger is you've got idiots who are romanticizing the noble savage, guys. It's not a life anyone wants to live nowadays. Maybe there are a few nutters that want to go out there and live, you know, or at least LARP in the Stone Age. But not really. I don't think a lot of people would want to. I think going out for the weekend hunting, learning some traditional skills is a bit different to giving up and sacrificing modern conveniences. So let's have a look at this. The revolt against Australia Day is well and truly upon us. Now, this has only been, you know what, let's have a look. Google search terms. Let's have a look at this. Search history. Let's see, how can we do this? Invasion Day. Oh, there you go. Look at that. It's all coming up. When did this appear? When did this appear? When did this term, when did it start appearing? Definition. We can't find it. Okay. Trying to find it. Because this term, I don't remember it in the 90s. I don't remember it being used back in the day. Now, I have always worked on Australia Day, you know, ever since university. This has been the time of year where we're just getting started, so we've always worked and done uni work. Occasionally would have gone out, but you know, that's a habit I've gotten into. But I still, when did this start appearing? It seems to be a new thing that's gaining more prominence, probably thanks to the ABC. In cities around the country, Invasion Day protesters who want to see Australia's national holiday change from the 26th are making their voices heard. What's the point in changing the day? It's not going to make absolutely any difference. It's going to make a bunch of people feel like they've done something when they really haven't. That's the thing. You still have a big issue. There's a huge gap between people living in the metropolitan centres of our country and people living in the more remote centres of our country. You've got Indigenous Australians living in remote parts of Australia that just don't have access to services. They don't even have the same rights or freedoms that we do. And it's a huge cultural difference. I'll give you an example. We had a project for a client and they wanted some Indigenous art on the side of the building. Now, you'd think you could just find an artist, hire them and engage them and provide them with that service. So someone could start a business as an artist and make some money doing it. Well, no. The artist needed to get permission from the people who were the traditional owners of the land. So they had this authority dictated to them, so they could control and veto and have a say on these type of things. I really hope they didn't get a kickback. I hope they didn't get a bloody kickback. I don't know if they did. But the fact that you've got a culture that is so conservative, that has such, you need to give difference and kowtow to the leaders, well, no wonder they've had tens of thousands of years of no technological progress, everyone. And sometimes you need to cast off those shackles for some innovation. It seems strange that you have the left, who claim to be so progressive, wanting to keep a whole portion of the population in some type of, museum bubble, you know, that they have to stay their culture. They're not allowed to dare even explore other cultures, or, you know, then that'd be appropriation. That'd be bad. It's kind of sad. They don't see people as humans. They see them as how their use, you know, their use or their tribe or their group or their category. That's what it comes down to. And I just see people who are stuck in the middle of nowhere with no opportunity. Can't even own their own land. It's all controlled by a quasi-body corporate. You can't get ahead. The government controls the bloody shop that you're in. People can't even go there. There's certain parts of this country, because of my race, I cannot even go into. Here in Australia, in modern Australia, what the hell is that going to do for commerce or tourism or business opportunities? Nothing. It's going to just destroy it. So then, what are you going to have? What opportunities are there for young men? Nothing. So what do? Well, look at all the social issues we have. Is that going to be addressed in any of this? Guarantee you not. 100% not. It's just going to be the same old tokenistic garbage that won't really lead to any change. And this all comes back to freedom, liberty, and the free market. What if you're a young Aboriginal bloke that wanted to start a business in one of these towns where you can't even, everything's centrally controlled, the shop is run by the government? What if you wanted to start, go off the island, get some stuff, bring it in, sell it cheap? Oh no, you probably get done. Yeah, there you go. That's what happens, everyone. In the Sydney suburb of Newtown, a fresh mural painted by acclaimed street artist Scott Marsh emerged at first light. It shows Scott Morrison dressed as Captain James Cook next to two words, Captain Cooked, and the hashtag change the date. Okay, well, come on. It's not going to mean anything. Do people really think if the English didn't settle here, other countries wouldn't have settled here? Seriously. There were still people that came out from bush in the 80s. Okay, there was the last tribe, the last family that was still wandering out there in the desert, living like the Stone Age in the 80s. Okay, you don't have access. If anything, their diet probably would have been better. This is the one thing I think we should really feel guilty of. The fact that we've destroyed Indigenous health with the terrible Western diet. Because their traditional diet was much healthier than the crap that they're eating now. They're drinking Coke and all the garbage that they're eating, which is what everyone in Australia is eating now. It's just doing tremendous damage to their health. That's what we really should feel guilty about. But anyway, let's have a look at this. If you do the right thing, I'll do. Hang on. So not far from there, at the Domain in Sydney CBD, thousands of people have already gathered for Invasion Day protests, despite a warning from police to stay away. If you do the right thing, I'll do the right thing, an officer told an organizer after crowds pushed towards the 500-person gathering limit enforced under public health orders. Among protesters, there is Paul Sylvia, a nephew of David Dungree Jr., a Dunghutti man from Kempsey who died in prison custody in 2015. I'm here to demand the abolishment of Australia Day, he told news.com.au. A speaker at the event, Gwenda Stanley, told a crowd of more than 500 people that it was time for Indigenous Australians were given proper reparations. $1 million for each black person, she said. $1 million for each black person. Well, let's have a look at a few numbers, everyone. Let's look at a few numbers. So right now we've got a population of about 798,000 in 2016 of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, and they're growing, which is great to see. So they're expected to be 1.1 million at 2030. Now, there's an estimated 33.4 billion of Australian state, territory and government expenditure on services for Aboriginal Australians. That includes welfare support and all of the other programs, all of the money just thrown at it. A lot of it to bridge the gap, which is a government program which isn't bridging the gap. So if we divide one by the other per year, that's 41,000. So per person, you'll get that $1 million in 24 years, 25 years, let's say. That should be a sign that just chucking money at a problem isn't going to fix it. It isn't. It doesn't. It won't. Now, I have had professional experiences and worked with Aboriginal people across a range of strata in society. I had one experience where at university, I was asked to provide additional tutoring support to a young Aboriginal bloke because they got extra support at university, an extra like 2 hours a week, something crazy. And this young guy, he was really struggling for the design subjects, because architecture is quite tough. You need to really do a lot of problem solving, and you need to be left to your own devices. Now, I was there guiding him to do things, and he would say, oh, why don't you do it for me? Why don't you do it for me? And I go, nah, mate, stuff that. I don't do the work for you. I'll tell you what to do and talk to you about it, and we'll help get you there. But you got to work. The poor kid, he was not suited for university. He really wasn't. His father was a builder, so that's probably why they pushed him to do the architecture thing as a bit of prestige. He could have made more money being a builder. They pulled me aside to have a talk, and how can we get him through the course? How can we get him through the course? They showed me all his grades. He kept failing these subjects again and again and again. I go, well, no, you can't. You got to tell him to quit and become a builder. Why are you asking me this? You know, how to get him through. He shouldn't be here. And, well, let's just say I wasn't involved in that program for much longer, because that was the goal. The goal was to get the kid through. The goal wasn't to help him along the best path of his life, which is what you would do. And university isn't for everyone, guys. Okay, there's a harsh reality. It's got nothing to do with your race or anything. It's got to do with your ability and how you want to work. Some people are going to be better on the tools. Building, probably make more money. That's the problem. That's more of a cultural problem too, a disrespect for being involved in university or being involved on the tools. We had another instance where we worked on, you know what, I will bring this up. I'll bring up this project to show you. This was a project we worked on. Oh, wait, nope, not here. My architecture website. This is looking at addressing Indigenous housing in remote communities in Australia. And we worked with an Aboriginal architect, and we looked at, so here we are, we looked at a different range of designs to address some of the cultural issues and to, you know, build the majority of the structure, the volumetric structure, remotely, and then truck it in and then have work that the locals could do to maintain, and the skill level of some of the tradies out there to make it easier. Unfortunately, it didn't get off the ground. We didn't win the tender. I think the tender won because they had a basketball hoop there. I mean, we had concrete options, we had more lightweight options, we had multiple places where people could sleep. If you had, you know, family visiting, you could, you know, have people sleeping all over the place, and they'll chuck a mattress down, cross ventilation. You could access it and get out from both sides if you've got IPv issues as well. So that was quite an interesting project. And there I was working with a gentleman who was an Aboriginal architect. They're not that many. But there definitely is a demand because there's a cultural difference in just housing, how housing is used, from, you know, Western culture to Indigenous cultures. And that's why you get the government provided housing is never really up to scratch sometimes. That was a shame. That would have been a great project if it had got ahead. We killed ourselves working on that one. So, okay, so $1 million, yeah, they're all getting it now. About 25 years. That's how much money the government is pissing away on this issue. And it's not helping the average person, guaranteed. It's not. And that's not counting all the mining royalties and all these other things that some of the communities are getting, where there's all this corruption there. You can see it's just the same as every other thing, guys, you know? There's always going to be the people at the top who take the cream off it, and the poor person who doesn't, who has their freedom and their you know, their liberty curtailed, is going to cop it. So don't be fooled by the Uluru statement from the arse. Let's do reparations before treaty. $1 million for each black person, and then we can talk treaty. I mean, it just shows you how stupid this claim is. It's just attention seeking, I'm assuming. New South Wales Police Assistant Commissioner Mick Willing yesterday warned officers would not hesitate to ensure crowd numbers stayed under 500. Do not come in and be part of that public gathering. Find another way to express your views and opinions, he said. I mean, there you go. So, yeah, stereotypical group of people there that are doing it. I mean, how think about all these people going here protesting. It's not going to make any difference to someone living in remote parts of Australia. So we're all aware that these are sensitive issues, and they are very important issues to a lot of people. But we are still in the middle of a global pandemic, and we're asking people to abide by those health orders. Police will be able to issue on-the-spot fines of upwards of $1,000, but the penalty for breaching public health orders comes with a fine of up to $11,000 and 6 months jail terms. The pandemic this year saw Victorians unable to gather for an Australia Day rally because it was deemed a public health risk by the state government, but Melbourne City Council did approve an Invasion Day dawn service. I mean, come on. This wasn't some utopian civilization before we came here. It was a fractured group of tribes. It wasn't a cohesive nation. There was conflict occurring. Humans are like that, everyone. Come on. Stuff happens. At least people are learning about history. That's good. I mean, I remember talking to some Asian people at university about European history. Some of them had no idea. Melbourne Lord Mayor Sally Capp said the seated 250 capacity service at King's Domain was a way of supporting an event that reflects that ancient Australian history. The January 26 public holiday has in recent years seen thousands of Australians take to the streets to protest against Australia's national holiday. You know, there we go. A day of mourning, not a day to celebrate. Thousands have gathered outside Parliament House in Melbourne for a demonstration where a minute of silence was observed. Huge crowds are also peacefully protesting in Brisbane. Organisers of the Sydney protest told news.com.au 3,000 people turned up and there were no arrests. They're allowing us to occupy the domain and for the event to go ahead so long as there was no marching. So that wasn't the compromise, Ian Brown said. Mr. Brown, a Gomerio man from Moree, said the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which proposed a voice to Parliament, was not the answer. Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys. Every Aboriginal person already has a voice in Parliament. Yep, they do. They do. 100%. It's as useless as all of our voices in Parliament. It's our elected representatives. Okay? We're now at a point where they're Australians. That should be the thing that is a shame on our nation, that it took so long to grant citizenship rights to Aboriginal Australians in the past. That should be the thing that's brought to attention. But, you know, that's in the past. We're all Australians now. So I can completely understand why they feel disenfranchised by their political representatives, because they don't seem to give a crap about any of us, guys. Just look at the cash ban. Look, none of them were there in the chamber listening to any of the politicians giving their speeches. None of them. It was completely empty. They don't care about us. So, yeah, no, I understand why Aboriginal people want that. Because a lot of us want it. Because we all feel like our politicians don't listen to any of us. So, one way to address this is simply to make the Senate seats regional. Then you'll get country representatives, regional representatives, that will be closer tied to their politicians. This shouldn't be about having another Indigenous voice in Parliament. That shouldn't happen. We should be holding the members of Parliament that represent these communities to account. Why are they calling for another bloody bureaucratic rent-seeking crock of shit, which is what it would be? When we've already wasting so many resources on these politicians, why aren't here's a challenge for politicians. If you have a predominantly Indigenous community that you're representing, why do they feel like they need another voice in Parliament when they've already got you? So the statement doesn't do that. They have this idea the statement is a grassroots movement. There was no consultation done on my homelands. Well, yeah, mate, welcome to Australia. That's what being Australian is like. Feeling like your politicians don't give a crap about you. Yeah, cheers. There you go. You're Australian. That's something we can bond over. That and getting taxed to the hilt. The Invasion Day rallies call for, among other things, a change to the date to reflect the fact that for some it represents more than the beginning of British colonialism when the First Fleet arrived at Sydney Cove in 1788. They want it to be moved because the same date represents the continued genocide of the Aboriginal people. Well, no, it's not genocide. You're growing. You're predicted to be 1.1 million people by 2031. It's growing. The population isn't going down. Do leftists not really know what genocide means? Could that be what it is? You'd think. The problem, if that word loses meaning, that's even more concerning. So, I'm here to demand the abolishment of Australian days. One of the key figures in the New South Wales Black Lives Matter movement was told news.com.au changing the date of Australia Day from January the 26th would not be enough. Yeah, exactly, it won't be. You don't want to appease activists because it's a sign of weakness. If you appease, you just constantly appease. You just keep walking backwards and they'll keep taking more. You need to stand up to them. Paula Sylvia is the nephew of David Dungay Jr., a Dunghutti man from Kempsey who died in prison custody in 2015. I'm here to demand the abolishment of Australia Day. It's not significant to us as First Nations peoples. You didn't have nations. You had tribes. There's a difference. They didn't even have the concept of nations. Oh, wait, no, maybe they did, but still. Over 250 years ago, the First Fleet came in and murdered, raped, and stole children of our ancestors. Mr. Sylvia said the whole day needed to be abolished. Challenging the date is not going to make a difference in my view. See, this is the problem. Here's the problem, okay? People have this historical perspective that's pushed by the media and ideologues like our young lady here, young man, where they seem to think Indigenous Australians didn't have any agency, everyone. There were instances where both, there was a massacre of farmers and then there was a counter-reaction. So, come on, guys. History is full of blood and bodies on both sides. It's better to look forward at how people can work together to a better outcome. How about we try and free Indigenous Australians from these socialist government organisations that are keeping them downtrodden, that we're wasting billions of dollars of taxpayer money to achieve absolutely nothing, where the goal to bridge the gap hasn't actually improved. And every year we discuss the same thing. Back when I was at uni, the discussion was from an architectural perspective, simply providing adequate housing. If you looked at some of the quality of the remote housing, it's not because they're, tearing it apart. No, it's because they're building these houses in areas with heavier water, with dust everywhere, where it's hard to keep people clean because your hot water system can't handle the water. It fails. Where they're getting repair and maintenance because they put domestic stuff in there, which just falls apart in the climate, in the water. And then, okay, the kids you can't wash them. There you get eye diseases. Okay, that's the problem. They will allow Australia to celebrate a day when murderers and criminal activity took place. It's just appalling. Mate, it happens all the time. Okay? Seriously, you need to learn a bit more history. Every day has been a horrific day in history. Okay? Humanity can suck in many regards. Mr. Sullivan also hit out at Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who last week stoked controversy by suggesting that those who arrived in the First Fleet didn't have a flash day either. Him making comments like that is just appalling. He basically condones what happened when the First Fleet came here. What do you think would happen? They set up a flag. You're not in the Stone Age, mate. You can actually speak English. Come on. This is like me being angry for the acts of aggression by the Prussians against the Austrians. On both, which side of my family do I pick for? When am I getting my reparations? Linda Thorpe, the first Indigenous woman in Victorian Parliament, is using her platform to call for change. On Twitter, she wrote, "Too many Australians still think January 26th is a day of celebration, but for Aboriginal people across the country, it's a day of mourning. That's why I'm inviting communities, councils and organisations to fly the Aboriginal flag at half-mast on Invasion Day." I mean, this is going to create nothing but divide. Absolutely nothing but divide. Don't you want to bring people together? But no, she's probably left-leaning. She's a Green, I think. So, of course not. It's that victim mentality. You need to use it. It gets you votes. It gets you power. It gets you influence. It gets you government funding. In the Sydney suburb of Erkinsville, protests had already begun. The words 26th of Jan, day of mourning, not a day of celebration, were spray-painted across a large wall along one street. Invasion Day protests were all planned for Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Canberra, Perth, all across the country. And there's a survey you can take on it. So there we have it, everyone. Calls for $1 million per person in reparations. Well, we're pretty much spending that already every 25 years. And it's not going to make any difference. Even if we change the date, it's just going to appease a minority. It's not going to help people living in these remote communities who've got a lot of problems to deal with. What would I suggest? Well, we need to empower people to understand that their liberty and freedom are what is most important. And, well, maybe get a generation of young men to stop thinking like a victim and cast off the shackles of submissiveness to previous generations. Maybe get some entrepreneurial spirit going. What about if we created some tax incentives to allow businesses to set up in these areas? Or maybe just remove the racist rules that stop people going to places, and a tourism sector might evolve. What do you think? Australia in the 21st century. I think we'll be talking about the same rubbish next year. As long as people can use it for political power, they will. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. If you're a fan of the channel and enjoy the content I put together, there are a few ways you can support us. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links from Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or AussieBroadband. You can buy merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. I'll see you next time, and have a great Australia Day. Bye for now.